All right. Looks like we got a pretty good group on right now. I'm just going to go ahead and explain a little bit more about the poll feature. We added this into our webinars just to offer some more interaction with the audience. Feel free to join. There's no pressure either way, but it does make the presentation a little more interesting. So feel free to text the number 22333 with the message CaraGreen 604. And then you'll be locked in, and the different polls will kind of prompt you on what to send in, and just provide some more context on what we should focus in on for the presentation. So a little bit of an introduction and some housekeeping topics. I'm Rob, I work with CaraGreen. We are co-hosting this webinar with Circular Triangle, and we have Ali from Circular Triangle working with us today. So we'll both be presenting to you today. This is a presentation that we're offering AAA credit for. So if you would like any credit or anything like that, just you can email me, rob@caragreen.com, and we'll get that processed for you. If you need a certificate for third-party reporting, anyone else other than AAA, we can help you with that too. Again, just send me an email as needed. We're going to ask that you stay on mute during the majority of the call. There will be time for question and answer, but we have a couple of people, Teal and Maddie, manning the chat box. So feel free to shoot some messages in there if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer either during or after the presentation. Just a little bit of background on CaraGreen. We are focused on sustainable materials in the built industry, built environment, and we're really focused on being a source of education for different topics like the circular economy. So it's been really great to work with Circular Triangle on this and act as a resource for you all on how you can do your part in developing the circular economy within the built environment. And overall, we're looking to create sustainable, healthy, and environmentally friendly spaces for us to live, work, eat, play, really anything you could think of. We're just trying to move the industry in the more sustainable direction. But with that, we can touch on Circular Triangle, Ali, if you want, and then we could get into the meat of the presentation.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Ali, and I am a board member on the Circular Triangle nonprofit group. We are, like I said, a nonprofit, and we help organizations, governments, and communities reach zero waste goals. I'll speak more about this in an overview of the circular economy at large, but we're really focused on the circular economy as a means of achieving sustainability and healthier communities.
So now we just wanted to kick things off. We're going to be talking in a lot more detail in just a minute, but we wanted to see what you all already know. And this is just a free text response. You can really send in whatever you want. Even emojis come up, as we just learned in the testing. So feel free to send any ideas of what you've been exposed to about the circular economy, maybe what you're doing in your current workplace or role. We'd love to see anything that you know of. Looks like we've got some good things coming in. Glad to hear people need to learn more. That'll be perfect for today. Closed loop system, I love that term, and we'll definitely dive into that a bit today. Reducing local waste, another great key point of the circular economy. Awesome. This is great. Thank you, everyone. But with that, we can start getting into the presentation. I'll let Ali take it away for the first section.
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of a shout out to Circular Triangle as well. So we are like I said, a nonprofit. We're based specifically in the Triangle region of North Carolina. And our website includes a lot of information on circular economy as it specifically relates to the built environment. So feel free to check out our blog posts and everything else if you feel like you want a bit more information about the circular economy after this presentation. But so to get into just a basic overview of the circular economy and then specifically how it relates to our conversation today in the built environment. The circular economy it's more than sustainability, and it's rethinking and reshaping our supply chains to be restorative by design. So as this quote states, and as you see in this little diagram over here, it's this idea of the system as a whole and bending our supply chain to include more externalities. So right now in our linear system, we are not including the externalities of our waste. And some of the aspects of the circular economy are seen here as things like reuse, repair, and recycle. I saw those mentioned in the poll, and the recycling sector as well. I think that's something that most sustainability professionals are, and just basic individuals are most familiar with recycling, or basic recycling systems at home, production, and how we consider supply chains. And Rob will talk more about manufacturers as it relates to circular economy in our buildings, distribution, and consumption. So next slide. This is a look at our current system. So like I said, it's that linear system of taking resources and then making products and eventually disposing of those products once we are at our end of life with them, or they no longer serve us or are broken, for example, and they just need to be disposed. Next slide. The idea of the circular economy is really embodied by this fantastic diagram from Ellen MacArthur Foundation. It's called the butterfly diagram. And if you're not familiar with it, once you learn more about the circular economy, you will see this diagram everywhere. And for the purpose of our presentation, or for CaraGreen's perspective and circular triangles, we're really focused on this right side of the butterfly in the built and industrial environment sector, but there's also this aspect of, like someone mentioned in the poll, composting and the natural systems of circular economy. Nature knows no such thing as waste. And so getting our built environment systems closer to that kind of model. Next slide. There are so many benefits to the circular economy, from health saving or health benefits for individuals, as well as carbon emissions to slow climate change. You can see all of these benefits here, and there's really a wealth of knowledge about the circular economy. And again, I encourage you to, if this presentation really sparks your interest in this concept, to go seek out other reports and everything else that's available from both Ellen MacArthur Foundation and groups like Circular Triangle, and CaraGreen provides that more specific approach as well. So taking a look at our current flow of materials. And the circular economy has, like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation diagram suggests, it's more than what we're here to talk about today, the built environment. But you see construction and demolition debris is really a problem in how we are building our communities. If you go to the next slide. In 2018, the EPA reported that 600 million tons of C&D debris were generated in the United States, and that's just generated, so not recycled or landfilled. But that's just a lot of material, and C&D debris in particular is oftentimes very recyclable. If you think about MSW, you have some more tricky materials in there, plastics and everything. But C&D debris oftentimes is, so the markets are there and the system is set up, but we're just not getting from point A to point B and thinking about things in a circular manner. C&D, good question. C&D is, oh, Teal already got me. C&D is construction and demolition. I should have provided that, but thank you, Teal. MSW is municipal solid waste. So if you think about household waste, those are two major streams of waste. And to kind of tee it up for CaraGreen, when you think about circularity, there are so many opportunities at all scales, and it can be kind of difficult to think about the circular economy in a global sense of massive material exchanges and international trades and all of that. But you can easily break it down to things that are possible at the city level. So what we work on is circular triangle, and then even a specific building and a component in that building. There's so many opportunities to reevaluate how we consume our products. And it's been great to work with CaraGreen as well. They have some really cool products that I'm excited to hear more about in their presentation. And with that, I will give it to them.
Awesome, thanks, Ali. So now that we have, a pretty basic understanding of what the circular economy is, looks pretty complex, with all those moving parts and how we can get to a point where all the supply chains are, that perfect butterfly diagram feeding back into each other. It seems like a bit overwhelming, but, if we just start to focus on these smaller parts, so think, one building material or one building, we can then expand that out to full cities, full countries, and then the global economy. So, in every aspect of the building industry, we're seeing, a pretty important role that each stakeholder can play. So when we look at construction and demolition, we need to start focusing on, the buildings, the materials that go into them, and then how they can be reused at the end of their life. So we need to build with the mindset that this will be taken apart, disassembled, and returned to manufacturers, to recycling plants, whatever the next use for this material would be. We need to have that in mind while designing, and then have a plan for demolition where this doesn't all get shipped off to a landfill. When we look at the product manufacturers, people like CaraGreen, Durat, Paper Stone, those are some of our manufacturers, need to start looking at how they can create products that can be reused after their install lifetime, or maybe how we can use sustainable operations or offset our carbon emissions from shipping. So that's the relationship we're playing right now. When we look at architecture and design firms, we need to start considering how can our spaces be created in a way that can be taken apart and reused. How can we find materials that should be specified to fit this circular economy? And then finally, we need to look at real estate investors, really any building investors at all, building owners especially, to see how they can influence the development strategies. The ownership is pretty much the single person approving design. So design and product choices and budget. So when we talk to these people, it's really important to push the importance of a circular economy and sustainability overall. So there's a huge responsibility that lies there, and it trickles down to the three other parties on here that do have a part in arguing for more sustainable decision making. So when we look at a certain space, we want to start to think about how does this contribute or not contribute to a circular economy. What's going to happen to every single chair, carpet tile, coffee table, light fixture, after the end of the building's lifetime, when they go to, renovate, where is this all going? So we need to talk about a few things. Where did this material come from? How was it made? How did it get to this project site? And what are we going to do with it at the end of its life? There's lots of material in here that I could see being recycled, but the plan might not be in place. And that's really the biggest hurdle we're seeing right now is, are these take back programs manufacturers have legitimate, and are they, functional right now? So when we look at what a circular building could be, we're not talking about an actual circle shaped building, but we're talking about a modular building that's reusing existing materials and resources, but also that has a plan for being disassembled and reused into other buildings, products, really can be anything. So There's 5 main features of a circular building, and we've defined those as modular, prefabricated, easily broken down, recyclable, and reusable. So we're going to jump into each of these in a little bit more detail, and you'll see that diagram on our one-page handout that's going to summarize this presentation. So when we talk about modular, we're talking about standardized units or dimensions for flexibility and variety in use. We want to make the building easily renovatable and also make it very easily deconstructed. So, the dream here for us is to have barcodes on every material so that you can scan and then know exactly where this material is going to go at the end of its life, or what the lifetime is, just to streamline this process. This is going to reduce waste and pollution during construction, as well as increasing efficiency during construction because of taking into account the different dimensions of certain products as they are assembled. And it just makes it a more convenient process to find new uses and take apart the building at the end of its lifetime. When we look at prefabrication, this means that certain parts of the building are made at a factory so that construction is a quicker and more simplified process. This is just, assembling more complex units, bringing them to the project site, and throwing them onto the building in a very quick pattern. So we're really seeing this happen a lot with exterior cladding walls, plumbing systems, some of those more complex parts of building projects that can be done off-site and then, pre-assembled onto larger fixtures so that when you come into the project, you're not wasting material, you're not wasting time, you're just getting that prefabricated section thrown onto the building in a very quick and efficient manner. So we have a quick video we wanted to show you some of about a company that is currently doing prefabrication and kind of how they're innovating beyond some of the standard practices in this realm.
We bring in rolls of steel, and then we use machines to shape the studs, the top track, the bottom track, and then we also have robotic arms that actually weld. Traditionally, you would see a ton of scaffolding all over the building. It's allowing us to dry in safe each floor, and the building just keeps going quicker and quicker.
Getting them into Tampa, which has very tight streets and a lot of one-ways, is a challenge. But we got out ahead of it, plotted out a specific approach route, got it cleared with all the relevant authorities, and are able to successfully pull it into a very tight corner of the job site.
The client sees a huge schedule benefit. The install here has been very smooth, and we get half a floor done a night. Another benefit the client sees is a whole controlled environment. You get better quality in a controlled factory, as well as a safety factor. So there's a lot less risk on the owner there.
It's very safe, very efficient. The panel gets craned up. We could dry in safe quicker and get people to work on the interior even quicker.
A traditional way to do this would require a lot more man hours in the field. It would be a lot more space taken up by material. Instead of a bunch of guys on mast climbers, all of the work to set these panels is done at the perimeter of the building. So it's not putting anyone at risk of a fall hazard.
It's the way of the future because of its cost effectiveness, because of you can increase your production and your schedule. Safety is a huge thing, and it allows us to really have a safe, precise product building off-site. Working off-site, we can have more control over the quality of the product, and we're excited about what the future holds.
So that was a great example of that prefabrication part, but what they didn't touch on so much was it also makes it really easy to break down the building. So you saw how they were able to throw those really large wall panels up in kind of just one motion because it was assembled offsite. Well, the same, can be said about, breaking down the building at the end of its life. If those, walls need to come down or replaced, it enables you to, take that section of the building and disassemble it offsite, sort all the materials, and return them to their various manufacturers or recycling centers. So we're seeing prefabrication really grow in popularity with some of our products that have cut to size programs at the manufacturing plant. I'm located in Washington, D.C., and I've had a lot of projects express interest in assembling these prefabricated wall panels out, further out from the city so that they can, minimize the space they need when they're building the project. So when we talk about easily broken down, it does connect to the prefabrication and the modular design concepts, but it's just, using fasteners instead of adhesives so that you can take apart the material without compromising the strength or the actual material itself. Designing this way allows you to reduce waste at the end of the life of the material and also reduce pollution caused by demolition. It also really allows you to preserve the integrity of the materials used so that they may be either, reconstituted into new material or recycled into a new product. So overall, it's going to cut costs in terms of labor and material waste, but also increase your efficiency in how quickly the building can be taken apart and put up in the first place.
And I'll just add to that, those three methods, or not methods, aspects of a circular building really tie into this idea of, if any of you are familiar with the food waste hierarchy that that has been created by the EPA, talking about like further up the hierarchy of designing for less waste in the first place to prevent even the need for recycling. The idea of recycling being so much further down as an environmental benefit, of course, better than landfilling, but prefabrication of designing out waste and not needing to, as DPR says, measure twice, cut once with prefab, as opposed to having these uncontrolled situations and environments on the job site. You're doing it off-site, the waste is controlled, and it's in that manufacturing environment. An example here of Nashville Warehouse Co., it's a project that's in development or is in construction in Nashville, another southeastern hub, and it's the first mass timber structure in Nashville of this scale. And like Rob mentioned, the reduced need for adhesives and using fasteners that ideally at the end of life, you'd be deconstructing this building, which is another aspect of the circular economy of deconstructing as opposed to demolishing a structure. They also, on this project, prefabricated plumbing systems. So there are some great photos of this project of massive plumbing systems being delivered on a flatbed truck going down, I-40. And it's just rethinking how we're doing this, how we're building our structures and how we interact with the buildings that we're living in and working in.
And those mass timber structures are just so cool to me. I think it's just such a cool innovation for us to be using a renewable resource rather than constantly relying on steel. I think, over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to see that become a lot more normal in the future, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But when we look at the next phase, and this is somewhere that CaraGreen, Cura is one of our products, offers is all about being recyclable, both in its composition and at the end of its life. So materials that incorporate recycled content are a great way to reduce the waste stream. With this particular example we have in the photo, it's Cura Eco Panel, and this is an acoustic felt made from recycled plastic, water, and soda bottles. So that's, having two impacts. It's helping the consumer waste stream, reduce its impact by incorporating this into a very valuable and renewable material, while also, reducing the need for, new virgin plastic in these materials. So there's one aspect there. The other part of this is that, by reducing our need for virgin plastic, you're lowering the demand and putting some value onto a recycled material. There's a huge market for acoustic panels, and this is just one of the many materials out there that are incorporating recycled material. So the other hand of this, recyclability in terms of the end of life, what can you do with the material at the end of its life? A lot of times these recycled content materials like Cure can be taken back, melted down, and made into new PET felt. So you're not just recycling once, you're going to continue to be able to recycle over and over again, making extremely valuable material. The next concept we can look at is reusable. So this is about products and materials that can be used multiple times and redistributed to new users, either in their original form or with little change or enhancement to the material. Reuse is keeping materials out of landfill, requires less energy for manufacturing, less water, other resources, of course. And since a lot of materials do contain some toxic elements, it does make them unsuitable for reuse. So we want to look at materials that have, a red list free certification or a health product declaration, things that will tell us, about whether this material is healthy to reuse in the first place. So on the right, we have another one of our products, Durat, which is a solid surface with a polyester base and recycled acrylic chips in there. So the really cool thing about Durat is, a fresh sheet of Durat is 28% recycled material. That is given with all Durat. We're getting the recycled plastic chips from a medical instruments manufacturing facility in Buffalo, New York, and putting them into this material down in Atlanta, where we manufacture this. And the other part of this is that we can reuse Durat. So what's really awesome is, solid surface does show wear and tear. I think we're all familiar with that concept, and it's going to scratch over time. But with Durat, you can quickly refinish the material. And we have an example right here. Durat was founded in Finland, so they do have a few more stories about this circular concept. But what they were able to do was remove these sinks. And I think they also had tubs and countertops that were taken out of the units in the hotel, and they actually were able to refurbish the furniture. So they, with some Durat colors, they're grinding down old sheets to add colored speckles, but in this case, they were able to refinish the sinks, tubs, and countertops, and then resell them as circular products. So these, sinks and everything were just sanded down, rubbed some orange oil on there to shine it up, and they were as good as new and resold to companies who really care about sustainability and wanted a reused material in their spaces. So now we got another poll for you all, and this one's pretty easy. Just select the letter that you connect with the most or have worked with before. Okay, looks like a pretty even spread so far. But I would encourage you all to, check out the prefabrication. It's a great way to save some money on projects and speed up project timelines as well. I think, where we're probably lacking the most is easily broken down as well. Something that we've, encountered with our take back program is, how do we get the adhesive off the back of Durat? How can we recycle it still if it has that all over the back? So what we've been recommending is to use mechanical fasteners to save the integrity of the material. But it's good to see everyone has some experience in the different areas we just discussed, and we can hop into some more about building materials now. So, in the design process and the building process, there are 6 layers that we like to talk about in the building. They're all, have different timelines and like lifetimes of the materials that make them up. So we do need to take that into account when designing and building. And the first stage is, first layer is the site. Where are we putting the project? Is this, a natural environment that has been untouched by man so far? Or, is this like a brownfield that we rehabilitated that can withstand construction or a built environment for a long period of time without compromising natural life? That's something that we always want to think about when starting a new site. And it's always better to start with something existing. When we look at the skin of a building, this is everything you're going to see on the outside, more of an aesthetic sector of the building, but we're looking for a really long lifetime for those materials. We want something durable that's going to hold up to all different forms of weather, whether that's extreme heat, extreme cold, rain, snow, everything. Long lifespan is optimal with those materials as they are harder to replace. They are oftentimes more resource intensive. So, we're looking for a long lifetime on those materials. The structural elements have a very long lifetime. Think about steel beams. That's an industry where they've done a great job in recycling material. Those all not only last for a really long time, but they're also, very easily recyclable. There's very high integrity in that material, which enables it to be repeatedly recycled. When we look at services, different things within your space, think about HVAC systems or, windows, operable windows. That's something else we're going to want to, look for a longer lifespan. Those are going to be, changed throughout the building's lifetime. The structure might stay the same, but those services, the space plan and the stuff, that's going to be repeatedly, renovated and changed. So those three is really where we need to focus on getting recyclable, reusable materials, or using materials that incorporate recycled material as well, because they will be changing so much. That's where we're seeing the most waste coming from. So we do need to put some special attention right there for, coming up with a plan what to do with the materials at the end of life. So, just from going over that, we know that design matters, and we know, it matters from the envelope all the way to every single finish, furniture item. And there's a lot of materials for the interior environment that can actually, impact behaviors, attitudes, focus, productivity, and have the, power to promote well-being and innovation. So, something we talk a lot about at CaraGreen is biophilic design and designing the space for your occupants to be as productive and healthy and motivated as possible. So, materials are a great way to, work on this circular economy, but also, help the occupants of the building live their best life. So when we look at the composition of materials, again, we want to focus on materials with high recycled content. Different things we can look at here would be acrylics, plastics, recycled papers used a lot, reclaimed wood, steel's recycled a lot, aluminum. So those are certain materials that, have been incorporated into our industry and will continue to be, the most popular over time. We want, a simple composition, a lot of mixing of different, what Cradle to Cradle would call technical nutrients, makes it really hard to recycle some materials. So when we look at this picture on the right, you'll see, there's one plastic for the bottle cap, there's another plastic for the label, and then another for the bottle itself. When we mix different types of plastics or metal and plastic together, it's really tough to take those apart and sort them into their respective recycling streams. So the more you can keep products to just one, one ingredient, the better the recycling stream will be for that material, the more efficient and the less energy it will use. So we want to, use materials that are diverting waste from incineration or landfills and look for materials that have adopted the circular economy to their business strategy, to their material strategy and innovation. So when we're looking at the creation part, so this is, creation more on planning and building the actual structure, we want to consider the yield of the material. This can get into customized dimensions. That's something we offer with some of our products. Say, you know, an example I like to use for this is our Durat solid surface comes in 114-inch length. A lot of times solid surface comes in 144-inch. So, you know, when you're designing your space, maybe instead of making a 130-inch countertop, you just design it to fit the one sheet of Durat, 114 inches, so that you're not wasting, you know, what would it be, 90-something inches of a second sheet. The other option is to request customized dimensions. That's something we do for no upcharge. We want to help reduce waste in these projects. So, you know, always keep us in the loop if that's something you find you need with one of our materials. You know, we don't see, you know, a big cost difference in any of that. It's something that, you know, we like to connect back to our mission and say we're reducing the waste. So, you know, look for quality in production so that there's not any mistakes in the material that might need to be returned once you get it to the field. And just look at how many resources are used to make certain materials. You'd be surprised, you know, how much embodied carbon can be in some of these materials that we use on a daily basis. Things like concrete, Portland cement are just notorious carbon emitters to get their product installed in a building and produced. So then we can look at the end of life of the material. Can this be reused for the same purpose, or can it be taken back by the manufacturer and used for a new product or remade into the same product? And this is where, you know, you might start to think about the cradle to cradle certification, you know, which gives products the designation that they are able to be taken back and reused for other purposes. So I know we talked a little bit about, you know, the different stakeholders, whose responsibility it is to transform our economy, but it's really all of us. We all need to play a part in this. So, you know, in order to regenerate natural systems, that's a lot on the manufacturers in creating our materials. We need to find materials that don't deplete the natural world, and also find ways for our factories to give back to the environment rather than polluting or using all the water in a natural place. Other things for A&D that we can focus on are building structures that incorporate the natural environment through things like green roofs. You know, we can bring, you know, natural spaces back to our cities with green roofs or other natural spaces around the building. Other, you know, area we need to focus on is designing out waste and pollution, heavily again on manufacturers and architects and designers. You know, we're focusing on taking buildings apart, not wasting as much material, and optimizing our yield for certain materials. The last is keeping products and materials in use. Manufacturers really need to have a robust take-back program, have this documented and incorporated into the specifications for the building, and building owners and contractors need to start to, you know, consider what is the process going to be to take this building apart, when is this going to happen, and what are the conditions that it happens under. So you might be asking, I know I saw it in a chat, how do I find a circular material? There's lots of great resources out there. You know, CaraGreen is a distributor, so we don't have our own certification. We're not partial to any of these. They're all really great resources. So, you know, one that I'm sure you're familiar is the Cradle to Cradle certification. This is certifying that the material is taken back at the end of its life and reused or recycled. Great certification to look for on products. Another group that's doing a lot of work on, you know, really disclosing health risk or environmental risk with materials is Mindful Materials. They have a database on, you know, all these sort of impacts that we see from our building material choices. And the other section we can look at is a life cycle analysis. And this isn't a certain body. There's a lot of agencies that do this testing for manufacturers, but basically it's taking a look at the full life cycle of the material from where it was sourced, the raw material, all the way through production to the end of its life. So evaluating all the impacts it has from, production to shipping to, its end of life if it's ending up in a landfill or recycled. So it's more about disclosing all those impacts than meeting a certain standard. And the LCA is then, incorporated into an environmental product declaration with EPD on the slide right here. And it, allows architects, designers to have a full picture of what the material is doing to the environment or not doing. And, the new version of LEED is actually really pushing on embodied carbon right now. So these different analyses are going to be very important going into the future, especially for those green building standards. So we touched on Durat a bit before, but we're just going to kind of go through the material and talk to you a little bit more on the recyclability and reusable nature of this solid surface material. So we do make this in the US. There is another manufacturer in Finland. CaraGreen is actually Durat USA as well. So we own the manufacturing in the United States down in Atlanta. We stock it there in California and in Raleigh as well. And the goal here to open up this US manufacturing facility was to provide a local solid surface material. It's better than coming from China or other parts of the world. It's, in our country with a low ship time to your location, reducing carbon emissions. And, the goal here for us was to find a solid surface material that can be reused and really optimize the life cycle of these plastics and acrylics that we use so much of in our space. And, eventually the goal is to be able to recycle all Durat material. I mentioned we were, right now we're working through some of that adhesive versus mechanical fastener conversation. And we're seeing, the best way for us to do this is using those mechanical fasteners just to, optimize the integrity of the material. So when we look at the story of Durat, we're using post-consumer and industrial plastics. So we are using a filler, that's those chips you see in there, that's the recycled content from Buffalo, New York. There's 28% recycled content in these. The creation, we're using, extra pieces or taken back pieces of Durat, scrap material or anything like that to fill these speckled areas. And you'll notice there's a lot of colors with the color ending in 008. So the 8 for us represents the infinity sign to touch on the circularity of Durat. So you're seeing, colors like this orange be incorporated into other colors by being just simply ground down and thrown in as the speckles right here, taken out of an existing install and put into new material. So when we look forward, just to touch on our roles as the stakeholders in the built environment, manufacturers are seeing pressure to produce materials that promote a circular economy. Architects and designers are pushed to educate themselves on this, educate their building owners, and also specify circular materials. We have contractors playing a key role here as well, kind of holding it all together by limiting demolition debris and construction waste and contributing back to our take back programs with the building owners, on that really big responsibility of choosing sustainable materials for their buildings and understanding both financial benefits and health benefits that could come from having their employees or staff in this type of environment. And then we have real estate investors who really drive a lot of new construction and trends in new construction, playing a key role of promoting those different design methods to their customers and designers.
And Rob, if I can add in here on that previous slide, there's something to be said about just engaging in conversation around these topics as someone in any of these roles, trying to, contractor to designer or designer to building owner or property development group. It's starting that conversation of what are the options and how would these logistics work to make a more circular structure or consider reducing C&D debris by simply recycling more on a job site. In so many ways, in parts of this country, we are pretty far behind in just simply recycling construction and demolition off the job site or on the job site, and getting into these more kind of high-level thinking, into this more high-level thinking about designing out waste in the first place. Takes a lot of logistical conversations, and every job site is different. So just, bringing up the conversation to those that you work with, and also other companies that you engage with on a project.
Thanks, Allie. I couldn't agree more. I think, our ideal goal here with this presentation is that you can use it as a tool for those conversations to keep yourself informed and provide some evidence on, why this is so important. So when we see, why circularity matters to all of us, and this is really touching on what Allie just said, is, it plays a role not just in terms of our economic vitality or our ecosystem health. It's actually promoting human health as well, and climate resiliency. So that is connected to the more environmental side of this, but human health is promoted with these materials because they're oftentimes not emitting VOCs during their lifetime. They are made from natural ingredients that are renewable. So a lot of these all go hand in hand. The circular economy really is the epitome of sustainability to me. And sustainability is just as much about, human and social issues as it is about the natural world and environmental issues we face. They're so clearly connected. So by, working on one of these bubbles, we can really, help the whole circular economy movement over time. So just some final notes to sum it up. It's not going to happen overnight. This transition is going to be a long one, but we're seeing it happen. I mean, even the supply chain issues we're seeing arise over the past month or so, with different, plastics or petrochemicals, it's forcing manufacturers of, everything from cars to building materials to take a look at what they're using and say, okay, maybe this isn't the most stable supply chain for us. We should start looking to a more rapidly renewable resource. So this, there's other factors that are pushing us in this direction, but we all need to start pushing it forward, take some baby steps, maybe have that uncomfortable conversation with someone who doesn't think the circular economy is important, and win them over, tell them why it matters, connect to them on a personal level, and have those conversations Allie was talking about. And, all industry stakeholders are involved here. We all have our role to play, and we need to buy into the circular economy concepts. A&D especially can start now by influencing the demand for these materials, influencing their customers to, make the right choice and really move forward with the support for these brands that are really doing great things to improve our natural world and our interior spaces. So one final poll before we wrap things up. How often have you heard circularity mentioned in your workplace or life in general?
I just wanted to add something about the kind of takeaway points from this as well, and the baby steps we can take. I think when we say circular materials, there's actually very few materials and very few processes out there that are fully circular. It's kind of this ideal state. So when we say things like promote circular materials, we're talking about those materials that contribute in some way to achieving that idea of circular economy. But they are pretty hard to find. It's pretty hard to find fully circular materials at this point.
Rob, another question that come up in the chat is, how do we estimate for costs of these materials in projects? Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, so as I'm a sales rep as well. So for me, when I'm trying to work with people to estimate these costs, I would say first off, always reach out to your rep. I'm sure they have some information on that. I'm always happy to have that conversation and be real with people that oftentimes these materials are more expensive than their conventional counterpart. It's pretty much the way it is right now until sustainable brands become the norm. I think that's the way it will be. But just, for me, if you need, costs specifically about these materials we just talked about, happy to help. We offer, sheet pricing or, just a square foot range, but we try to, help with that process because, a lot of times those interior materials especially are up for VE most frequently. So value engineering, nice way to put that, it's, out of budget, and we'll, cut the material because it's too expensive. So for us, we really like to get ahead of that conversation and talk to some of the financial benefits that you could have by having this material in your space or having a healthy interior environment. And, we go through some of those financials in our biophilic design webinar too, and how it impacts productivity in this design manner. So we're actually giving that one tomorrow as well. So if you want to, hop on our website, you can sign up for that too. And does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to take yourself off mute now. We can talk through anything. This is the end of the, AIA credited portion of the course, and we're happy to have a conversation if anyone wants. Otherwise, thanks for joining, and email me, rob@caragreen.com, if you need a certificate or AIA credit logged.
One more question that came up in the chat, Rob, is to what degree are you deploying material passports?
I am not familiar with the term material passports. Maybe if someone could, whoever asked, could elaborate. I believe this might be in terms of cradle to cradle.
Yeah, a document consisting of the materials that are included in a product. So that would be like a health product declaration or EPDs.
We don't have, okay, so I'm seeing this. We don't have so many materials that are actually cradle to cradle certified right now. Some of them are working on it. And I saw for urban mining, is that what we were talking about? Yeah, so, many of our materials are not mined. So we're not, touching on that so much. And as a distributor, we're focused less on the R&D and creation of materials and more in supporting the sustainable materials we're able to work with and helping them to get the health declarations and disclosures as well as the material disclosures similar to an EPD. It sounds like something similar to the disclosures that we work with. I just, we aren't really familiar with that for our products up to date.
That's a really good point, Michael. And in the chat, someone mentioned concentrating on new buildings, but retrofitting is a key component here as well. And that idea of reuse before even recycling and further up. I keep going back to this food waste hierarchy, but we've actually, during my other time, am working for Nashville Metro government, and we just formed a C&D hierarchy that mimics the food waste hierarchy. So the idea of reusing existing buildings is right there below designing for less waste. And reusing what we already have is so much better than even building new in the first place. So very good point, Michael.
Yeah, we've seen, I'm reading that comment about, Europe and their progression on the sustainable design front. As always, it seems like the US is a little bit lagging behind on that front, but a lot of the manufacturers we work with of Europe have some of the best practices I've seen for sustainable material creation and manufacturing, and it's really excited to see that start to come over. I know in my territory, it's been a huge push and from the government as well, in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, looking to promote these sustainable building projects. All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, we'll let you all go. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and feel free to check us out on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook as well. Both groups are present, and we're always posting, educational information, opportunities for webinars and items like that. So, use us as a resource. We're here to help.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for joining, everyone.